The Silent Guardians. Commander Ilara Chen stood at the observation deck of Outpost Theta, Earth's furthest deep space monitoring station. The massive viewports revealed the swirling cosmic gases of the Taurus Rift, a region of space that appeared deceptively beautiful from a distance. The iridescent nebula patterns masked what lay within, something humanity had discovered nearly 50 years ago, something they had been guarding ever since. "Commander, we've detected a vessel approaching from the Arcturus quadrant," Lieutenant Marcus Way reported, his eyes never leaving the holographic display. "It's not one of ours." Ilara's posture stiffened. In 15 years of service at the edge of human space, they'd encountered exactly 3 non-human vessels. Each encounter had been carefully managed, diplomatic, and ultimately uneventful. But those had been lone explorers, scientific missions from distant systems. This was different. "Configuration?" she asked. "Multiple vessels, a formation, military precision," Marcus replied. "They're not hiding their approach." Ilara tapped her neural interface, connecting to the station's defense grid, not to activate weapons. Those were a last resort, but to ensure the warning buoys were operational. "Alert Earth Command. Then open a communication channel." Standard first contact protocols. Within minutes, the approaching fleet had responded. The main view screen filled with an alien face, vaguely humanoid with silvery blue skin, multifaceted eyes that reminded Ilara of insect eyes, though larger, more expressive. The universal translator processed the alien speech with only a slight delay. "I am High Admiral Vextor of the Viridian Alliance. We come with peaceful intent to explore this sector of space." Ilara maintained her composure. "I am Commander Ilara Chen of Earth's Outpost Theta. Welcome to the borders of human space. We acknowledge your peaceful intentions, but must inform you that the region ahead, what we call the Taurus Rift, is restricted territory." The alien's facial ridges furrowed. "Restricted by whose authority?" "Our star charts show this region as unclaimed." "By the authority of human survival," Ilara replied evenly. "The rift contains phenomena dangerous to all sentient life. We've established a containment zone and warning systems for the safety of all species." The Admiral's multifaceted eyes seemed to shimmer with skepticism. "We have detected no dangerous energy readings. Our sensors are considerably more advanced than human technology." Ilara had heard this before. Every spacefaring species they'd encountered assumed their technology surpassed humanity's, usually because humans deliberately presented themselves as less advanced. A strategic decision made long ago. "The danger isn't detectable by conventional sensors," she explained. "We learned this at great cost." The communication ended with polite but firm assertions from both sides. The Viridians promised to respect human territory while conducting their own investigations of the alleged danger. Ilara knew exactly what that meant. 2 days later, Earth Command called an emergency session. Ilara attended virtually from Outpost Theta, her hologram materializing in the circular chamber where military and civilian leaders had gathered. "The Viridian Alliance is the most advanced coalition we've encountered," Admiral Santos began, his weathered face grave. "They represent 17 different species, all with interstellar capabilities exceeding our publicly known technology. Yet they don't believe our warnings about the rift," Director Okafor of the Anomaly Containment Division added. "Our intelligence suggests they're planning an expedition." Ilara nodded. "Their scout ships have been mapping the perimeter. They think we're being territorial, hiding resources or technology. If they enter the rift," General Nakamura began. "Then the silence will find them," Ilara finished, "just like it found the Artemis mission 47 years ago." The room grew hushed. The Artemis disaster was required study for every space cadet, the ship that had entered the Taurus Rift and returned with only one survivor, Dr. Isabel Shaw, who spent her remaining years helping humanity understand what she'd witnessed, what she'd felt. "We should reveal more," suggested Dr. Warren Chen, Ilara's father and one of the world's leading experts on the anomaly. Show them Dr. Shaw's recordings. Admiral Santos shook his head. The Security Council is clear. We don't share that information with any species until they've proven themselves allies. For now, we maintain the protocol. Warn, monitor, and prepare to contain. But if they wake it fully, Dr. Chen started. Then we execute the Sentinel Protocol, the Admiral said flatly. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. 3 days later, Ilara watched on the tactical display as a Viridian science vessel approached the outer boundary of the Taurus Rift. Her team had dispatched 3 warning drones, broadcasting in all known frequencies and languages. Danger. Do not proceed. Return to safe space. The Viridian ship ignored them. They've powered up their scanning array, Marcus reported. Deep penetration scans into the rift. Ilara closed her eyes briefly. They always scanned. They always had to know. Activate the buoys. Final warning protocol. Around the Viridian vessel, a dozen orbital buoys flashed to life, projecting a visible barrier field, not to physically stop the ship, but to make the warning unmistakable. A final line that should not be crossed. On the command channel, the Viridian captain appeared. Commander Chen, we appreciate your concern, but our mission is scientific in nature. Your barriers are unnecessary. Captain, this is not about territory or resources, Ilara insisted. The phenomenon within the rift responds to certain energy frequencies, particularly scanning equipment. Please, turn back. The captain's expression suggested he found her quaint. Our sensors detect nothing alive in that region. Only unusual spatial distortions which we intend to study. Perhaps we can share our findings with Earth afterward. The transmission ended. The Viridian ship pushed forward, passing through the warning field. Ilara activated the secure channel to Earth Command. They've crossed the line. Request permission to initiate containment procedures. Negative, came Admiral Santos' reply. Let them see for themselves. We'll monitor and prepare for retrieval operations. For 20 minutes, the Viridian ship proceeded deeper into the rift, sending regular updates to their fleet. Their communications were encrypted but easy enough for Earth systems to decode. Unusual spatial metrics, gravitational inconsistencies, no signs of the danger humans warned about. Then, at exactly 23 minutes after entry, the Viridian ship's communications stopped mid-transmission. Everyone on Outpost Theta's bridge held their breath. Marcus whispered, "Are they just silent, or?" Ilara's eyes remained fixed on the readings. Wait for it. 2 minutes later, their sensors registered a massive energy spike from within the rift. Brief, concentrated, and then gone. Where the Viridian ship had been, nothing remained. It found them, Ilara said softly. The Viridian Alliance responded exactly as humanity had feared. Within hours, their diplomatic vessel demanded an explanation, accusing Earth of sabotage, of hiding weapons platforms within the rift, of destroying their science ship. Admiral Vexter's face filled the screen in Earth's Security Council chamber, his multifaceted eyes now cold with rage. Your warning was a pretext. You concealed weapons within this spatial anomaly. President Amara Okafor, who had once directed the Anomaly Containment Division, maintained her composure. Admiral, we warned you repeatedly. What exists in the Taurus Rift is not a weapon of our making. It is an entity, a phenomenon that we discovered through our own tragic losses. Convenient explanations, the Admiral hissed. If this entity exists, why have you established outposts so close to it? Why does it seem to spare your vessels? Because we learned how not to wake it, Dr. Chen interjected. We learned to be silent near it, to never probe, never scan, never disturb. The Admiral's expression shifted to something like contempt. If such a being exists, the Alliance must study it. Contain it properly, not with your primitive warning buoys. We will send a proper research fleet. You must not, Ilara said, stepping forward. The entity responds to intrusion exponentially. One ship awakened it briefly. A fleet will trigger something far worse. Is that a threat, Commander? the Admiral asked coldly. "No," she replied. "It's the only warning we can give you." Back on Outpost Theta, Ilara received the encrypted orders she had hoped would never come. The Viridians were mobilizing a battle fleet, ostensibly for research and protection, but Earth's intelligence was clear about their intentions. They believed humans had developed some weapon or technology within the rift and were determined to seize it. "Begin evacuation of all non-essential personnel," she ordered. "Prepare for Sentinel protocol activation." As the outpost staff hurried to comply, Ilara retreated to her private quarters. From a secure compartment, she removed an old-fashioned paper notebook, Dr. Isabel Shaw's journal, passed to her father and now to her. She turned to the final page, where the last survivor of the Artemis had written her final warning. "It doesn't hate us. It doesn't even know we exist as individual beings. We are like microbes to it, irritants when we probe too deeply. It exists in dimensions we barely comprehend, and our presence, our scans, our attempts to understand, they are like needles piercing the veil between our world and its consciousness. Each disturbance makes it more aware of our dimension. Each awakening lasts longer. If we wake it fully, it won't return to sleep. And what follows will redefine existence for every sentient species in this galaxy." Ilara closed the journal as the alert klaxons began to wail. On her display, she watched as the Viridian battle fleet, 20 ships strong, approached the boundary of the Taurus Rift. Humanity's warnings had fallen on deaf ears. Now they would all face the consequences. What lies beyond? The Viridian battle fleet hovered at the edge of the Taurus Rift, an impressive array of starships that gleamed against the backdrop of swirling cosmic gases. 20 vessels in formation, weapon systems primed, scanning arrays active. From Outpost Theta, Ilara Chen watched with a growing sense of dread. "They're scanning at full capacity," Marcus reported, his voice tight. "Multiple frequencies, deep penetration. They've deployed probe drones," added Lieutenant Sanvi Kapoor from the sensor station. 6 of them, entering the rift ahead of the main fleet. Ilara activated the emergency channel to the Viridian flagship. "Admiral Vextor, this is Commander Chen. I implore you one final time. Recall your probes, deactivate your scanners. What you're doing will trigger a response beyond your comprehension." The Admiral's face appeared on screen, his silvery features set with determination. "Commander, we've indulged your species' superstitions long enough. If there is a weapon or technology hidden in this region, the Alliance will find it. If there is truly some entity as you claim, then it requires proper scientific study, not fearful avoidance." "This isn't about fear," Ilara insisted. "It's about survival. The entity doesn't distinguish between curiosity and aggression. It only knows disturbance." The Admiral's multifaceted eyes narrowed. Then perhaps it should learn the difference. Transmission ended. The view screen went dark. Ilara stood in silence for 3 heartbeats, then turned to her communications officer. "Send the coded authorization to Earth Command." Threshold crossed. "Then initiate final evacuation protocols. All personnel except Sentinel teams to emergency transport vessels." As the outpost erupted into controlled chaos, Ilara retreated to the Sentinel control chamber, a room few knew existed. There she met the small team who would remain behind. Dr. Yuri Volkov, neurophysicist, Lieutenant Commander Jackson Hayes, quantum systems specialist, and Chief Engineer Mai Wu, containment systems expert. "It's time," Ilara said simply. Dr. Volkov nodded grimly. "I've prepared the psionic dampening field. When the entity awakens fully, it should help shield our minds. The quantum barrier is ready," Hayes added. "But if they penetrate deep enough with those scans..." Mai Wu finished the thought. "The barrier won't hold, not against a full awakening." Ilara placed her palm on the central console, allowing the system to scan her DNA and brainwave patterns. A hidden compartment slid open, revealing Earth's most closely guarded technology no alien species knew humans possessed. "Then we show them what humanity has been preparing for the past 47 years," she said. Inside the Taurus rift, the Viridian probes pushed deeper, their powerful sensors mapping the strange spatial distortions. On the flagship, Admiral Vextor received the initial data with growing excitement. "These readings are extraordinary," the science officer reported. "The spatial fabric here exhibits properties I've never seen. It's almost as if—" The officer stopped mid-sentence, his multifaceted eyes widening. "Continue, Scientist Threll," the Admiral prompted. "Sir, the fabric of space. It's responding to our scans. Shifting. Organizing." A low-frequency vibration began to pulse through the flagship's hull. On the sensor displays, the swirling patterns of the rift began to change, coalescing like a fluid taking shape. "Fascinating," the Admiral murmured. "Some kind of reactive plasma phenomenon, perhaps. Increased scanning intensity. I want to understand the mechanism." Scientist Threll hesitated. "Sir, perhaps we should consider the human warnings, if this is some kind of sentient. The humans are a primitive species hiding behind mysticism," Vextor interrupted. "Their warning buoys and outposts are merely tools to keep others away from a scientific discovery they wish to monopolize. Proceed with the scan." As the scanning intensity increased, the vibrations grew stronger. Communication with the probes became erratic, then ceased entirely. On the view screens, the rift's patterns continued to change, no longer flowing randomly but spiraling inward, like a massive drain pulling in the surrounding space. "Sir," the tactical officer called out, alarm evident in his voice, "the probes have vanished, and our scanners are detecting something emerging from the center of the distortion." Before the Admiral could respond, every screen on the bridge flickered and went dark. The ship's artificial gravity fluctuated. Several crew members cried out as they were lifted briefly from the deck, then dropped unceremoniously when gravity returned. And then came the whispers, not over the communication systems, but directly in their minds. Fractured thoughts, alien geometries, concepts that had no translation in any language. The bridge crew clutched their heads, some dropping to their knees. "What is this?" the Admiral demanded, fighting against the intrusion in his mind. The answer came not in words, but in sensations. Ancient awareness, curiosity, irritation at being disturbed. And beneath it all, a hunger that had slept for eons, now awakening. On Outpost Theta, alarms blared as the sensors detected massive energy fluctuations within the rift. "It's happening," Dr. Volkov said, his fingers dancing across the neural interface panel. "The entity is fully conscious now. I'm detecting psionic emanations at unprecedented levels." Through the viewports, they watched as the Viridian fleet began to drift in disarray. Formation breaking, ships spinning without control. "They're experiencing the mental intrusion," Ilara noted grimly, "just like the Artemis crew did." "Difference is," Hayes added, "there are a lot more minds for it to explore this time, more connections to make, more understanding of our dimension." Megwu's voice was sharp with urgency. "The quantum barrier is failing. The entity is expanding beyond the rift's boundaries. If it fully enters our spacetime, activate the Sentinel Array," Ilara ordered. Hidden panels throughout the outpost slid open as humanity's secret technology emerged, devices that appeared both mechanical and organic, pulsing with an inner light that matched the rhythms of the human brain. "Psionic amplifiers online," Dr. Volkov reported. "Quantum resonance building. Neurological pattern established," Hayes added. "The Shaw protocol is active." Ilara took her position at the central node, placing her hands on the interfaces, initiating Sentinel consciousness. Outside, the space between Outpost Theta and the Taurus Rift began to shimmer as hundreds of satellites, previously cloaked, revealed themselves. Each one extended crystalline arrays that caught and amplified the signals from the outpost. Within the Viridian flagship, the mental assault suddenly diminished. Admiral Vextor raised his head, blinking in confusion as the whispers receded. On the view screens, now functioning again, he saw something impossible, a barrier of light forming between his fleet and the rift, composed of intricate patterns that somehow reminded him of neural pathways. And then a voice, clear, calm, unmistakably human, spoke directly into his mind. "We are humanity's sentinel consciousness. For nearly 5 decades, we have stood guard over the threshold. We warned you. Now we must contain what you have awakened." In the void between the outpost and the rift, the light barrier grew stronger, more complex. Within the Sentinel control chamber, Ilara and her team were no longer separate individuals, but a unified consciousness, their minds linked through technology that no human had ever revealed to the wider galaxy. After the Artemis disaster, when Dr. Isabel Shaw returned as the sole survivor, she brought back more than warnings. She returned connected to something ancient, her mind irrevocably altered. In her final years, she helped humanity develop a defense, a way to communicate with the entity on its own terms, mind to mind. The result was the Sentinel Protocol, a technology that united human consciousness into a collective force, powerful enough to be perceived by the entity, to speak to it in the language of thought rather than energy or matter. Through this collective consciousness, Ilara reached out to the awakened entity, not with words but with concepts: sleep, peace, return, boundary. She felt its ancient awareness turn toward the human collective, curious about this new presence that spoke in ways it could understand. For a moment that stretched into eternity, 2 vastly different forms of consciousness touched, one human, technological, finite, the other ancient, vast, barely comprehensible. The entity probed the human collective, exploring its boundaries, its purpose. And then, slowly, the chaotic energies began to recede. The entity, satisfied that these small creatures understood boundaries and respect, began to withdraw back into its higher dimensional sleep. Admiral Vextor stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching in awe as the barrier of light pulsed between his fleet and the rift. 3 of his ships had been lost, simply gone, without debris or distress calls. But the rest remained intact. The mental whispers had ceased entirely, replaced by an overwhelming sense of being protected from something far beyond Viridian understanding. A communication request chimed, and the Admiral found himself facing not only Commander Chen, but a joint transmission from Earth's highest authorities. "Admiral," President Okafor began, "now you understand why we guard the Taurus Rift. Not to hide technology or resources, but to protect all sentient life from what dwells within." The Admiral's voice was subdued. "What is it? What lives in that space?" "We don't fully know," Dr. Chen answered honestly. "We call it the silence because that's what it requires from us. Silence, stillness, non-interference. It exists primarily in dimensions beyond our perception, touching our universe only lightly when undisturbed. But when awakened, it perceives our dimension more fully," Vextor finished, understanding dawning. "And it feeds." "Not maliciously," Ilara explained, her voice weary from the strain of the Sentinel Protocol. "It doesn't understand our existence as we understand it. To it, our minds are like plankton in an ocean, individually insignificant, but collectively an irritant when we probe too deeply, or a source of interest when we present ourselves as a unified consciousness." The Admiral's multifaceted eyes reflected the fading light of the barrier. "And this technology you've revealed, this mental collective, you've hidden this capability from all other species." "We had to," President Okafor said firmly. "Humanity lacked the advanced starship technology of species like yours, but we've specialized in neural sciences, in the connection between mind and universe. If we had revealed this technology, would you have believed our warnings? Or would you have coveted the technology itself, seen it as a threat or an opportunity?" The Admiral had no answer for that. "We don't seek dominion or control," Ilara continued. "We seek only to guard the threshold, to ensure the entity remains dormant. Now that you've witnessed the truth, the Viridian Alliance faces a choice. Join us in this vigil, or leave this sector of space forever." 1 month later, Ilara stood on the observation deck of the newly expanded Outpost Theta. Beside her stood Vextor, no longer wearing his admiral's insignia, but the simple uniform of a diplomatic liaison. The Alliance Council was resistant at first, he admitted. Some wanted to militarize the approach, others wanted to flee this entire sector. In the end, your president's offer of sharing limited aspects of your neural technology proved persuasive. Ilara nodded. Neural technology in exchange for your advanced propulsion systems. A fair trade. And a joint guardian force to monitor the rift, Vextor added. Though I'm still not certain I understand what we're guarding against. If the entity has returned to its sleep, it will sleep lighter now, Ilara said, gazing out at the swirling patterns of the rift. Each awakening leaves it more aware of our dimension. One day, perhaps centuries from now, it may awaken fully, regardless of our precautions. And then the combined consciousness of all sentient species may be our only defense, she replied. Not through force or weapons, but through understanding. Through becoming something it recognizes as worthy of communication rather than consumption. The former admiral was silent for a long moment. Your species surprised us. We thought humans primitive, isolated, technologically inferior. Yet you developed this neural technology in secret, maintained this vigil for decades, warned us despite knowing we wouldn't believe you. Humanity learned long ago that true strength isn't about having the biggest ships or the most destructive weapons, Ilara said. It's about foresight, patience, sacrifice when necessary, and recognizing that some threats can't be defeated, only understood and respected. Together, human and alien looked out at the beautiful, terrible rift, a boundary not just between regions of space, but between different conceptions of existence itself. Around it, the combined fleet of Earth and the Viridian Alliance stood guard, a new alliance forged in the face of a truth too vast for any single species to bear alone. In the distant depths of the rift, the ancient entity returned to its dreams, but a small part of its consciousness remained aware of the tiny sentient beings that had spoken to it mind to mind. Next time it stirred, it would remember them, not as irritants, but as something new and interesting in the vast emptiness of existence. And on 1,000 worlds throughout the galaxy, species that had once dismissed humanity as an evolutionary footnote began to reconsider. Stories spread of the quiet species that guarded the threshold, that faced cosmic horror with neural technology instead of weapons, that understood when to fight and when to stand sentinel. Humanity had earned its place among the stars not through conquest or technical marvel, but by standing guard at the edge of the abyss, warning others away from dangers they couldn't comprehend, even when those warnings were met with mockery and dismissal. In the end, it wasn't humanity's weapons that proved their worth to the galaxy. It was their willingness to keep watch, to sacrifice, to protect even those who laughed at their warnings. And in that silent vigilance, they found a strength no battle fleet could match.